Hey there everybody, welcome to Auto Bears, and believe it or not, this is the all-new Hyundai Kona. Now, when Hyundai and Kia first released the Kona and Niro, they were a little bit late to the B segment fight, which was already highly competitive and dominated by the established brands. However, through the years, you saw the Niro kind of get its way to the top of the tree, and it did cast a shadow on the Kona. I mean, there was nothing wrong with it. It was a very good all-rounder, but it just kind of lacks in certain areas, particularly in practicality and rear passenger space. So the one thing that Hyundai have done for this new generation of Kona, they've listened to their customers. So this new Kona is bigger, bolder, and packed full of more tech. And I've had this new Kona hybrid for a week, and I'm going to let you know, firstly, if the new Kona is any good, and secondly, can it get itself out of the shadow of the Niro and get itself into the light. Stick with me to find out. So then, the Kona's styling. Well, just like the Niro, it's a complete departure from the first generation. They've come out with this bold concept car-like design. And I have to say, in a battle of the Koreans, I do think the Kona takes the crown. And in fact, I would say this is probably the best looking car in its class. Now, it is dominated by this daytime running light that runs the entire width of the front end, and Hyundai call this a seamless horizon lamp. And what I love is that it's actually mirrored on the back of the Kona as well. Same with these little light clusters here on the corners of the car. And it gives it a very dynamic look. And it's actually very smooth as well and quite clean in its design, probably to aid with aerodynamics, because believe it or not, this was actually designed to be an EV first and then an ICE car and hybrid later, but the EV will arrive later this year. And of course, with this end line, it is quite sporty and a little bit fussy down at the bottom, but it has been turning heads. In fact, I've actually had a few people pointing fingers at me because this is the first time they've seen the new Kona on the road. But when you look at the Kona from the side, with all those angles and everything on the door panels, it reminds me very much of the Hyundai Tucson, and that's no bad thing because that's a bloody gorgeous family SUV. So you do get some Hyundai family resemblance there in the styling. But you let me know what you think of the new Kona's design in the comments section below. Is this to your taste, or do you fancy something a little bit plainer? Let me know. But I think Hyundai have done an amazing job with the new Kona. I absolutely love it. Now, one thing I will mention on this N-Line S trim, as even though we've got a full width daytime running light, when you're driving in the day, well, it's actually two sections. They're kind of like little slits to the eyes, something very reminiscent of the previous generation Kona. But when you drive at night and all the lights are on, this is a full width daytime running light or nighttime running light, and it makes the Kona instantly recognizable. But anyway, on that note, I think it's now time we have a look at the interior and see what Hyundai have done in there. Sat in the front of the new Kona, you are greeted by a very driver-orientated interior that's jam-packed full of kit and very comfortable, if a little dark in here. Now, because this is a little crossover, getting in and out of the new Kona is really easy because the doors open nice and wide, and because you've got a raised seating position. So if you do suffer from any kind of mobility issues, then this is definitely one car to look at. Now, on this particular car, I have got electrically adjustable seats, though I don't have any memory function, and they do come with lumbar support. And even the steering has both rake and reach adjustment, so getting the perfect driving position is easy. Now, when it comes to interior quality, I'm going to say it's not too bad. I mean, there's a lot of hard plastics in here, but they do feel of a very good quality. And I do like the fact that we have this kind of metal effect brush trim here on the center console. Now, on top of the dash, it does actually look like it's soft touch plastic, but it is actually hard. So I do like the fact it does give that impression of a more premium material. And then on the door panels, we have got some leatherette here as well. I will also mention that on the seats on this N-Line S trim, they are Alcantara with leather on the sides. So when it comes to interior quality, yes, there are other rivals out there with more premium feeling interiors, but I've actually got no complaints in here in the Kona. It does feel like a nice place to be, especially with that design. Cubby spaces in the Kona are actually pretty good, with some similarities to its Korean cousin, the Niro. Now, the door pockets are of a really nice size and shape. You can get a medium and possibly even large bottle of drink in there, but they're not lined with any fabric, so loose items will rattle around a bit. Now, here on the center console up front, we got a little dedicated tray area with some wireless charging. And what I love is got a little rubber patch on there so your phone won't move anywhere. So I really do like that. And we got 2 USB charging inputs and a 12-volt socket. Now, just behind there, we've got a nice open tray area, which is very handy for storing some items. But again, it's not lined with any fabric or rubber. But just like the Niro, there are a couple of buttons, so we can get 2 cup holders in there. And I do like the fact we've got a little plastic gripper on there as well, but again, it's not lined with any rubber. But I do love the fact that you can just tuck them away. And then just behind there, there's a little kind of, can I remove it on this one? No, I can't. Yes, I can. There's actually like a little divider, which means you can stop items at the back going into the front. So that is very handy. And then we have got a center armrest, which I can lift up, and it does reveal a little tray area, but it's not lined with any rubber. So if you put some coins or some keys in there, yeah, it's going to make a little bit of noise. So just be aware of that. And then we have got the glove box, which is of a decent size and shape, but it has got the book pack and manual in there, and that does take up a big chunk of space. And then there's a little tray area just above it, which is handy again for perhaps putting a wallet or just some little loose items up there. But again, it's not lined with any kind of rubber, which is what I would like to see, so that way it wouldn't make any noises. But yeah, when it comes to the cubby spaces here in the Kona, I am very impressed by them. I mean, it's very much on a par with what you have with the Kia Niro, but yeah, I do like some of the unique features there. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the Kona's interior design feels very much driver focused, and I really do like that. But not only that, there is a plethora of physical buttons in here, and Hyundai haven't gone the way of having everything operated via a central touchscreen. So we have got your shortcut buttons here on the dashboard. Just below there, your buttons for your dual zone climate control, and it feels very nicely laid out. Now, where we got the wireless charging pad and our 2 USB-C charging inputs, there are actually a couple of little buttons here. Now, one of them is the push open lid for the 12-volt socket. I really do like that action. There's actually another button here where you can swap from having your phone tethered and doing the Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, or it's just very simply charging your phone. So that's a very unique feature I've just come across there. Now, I will mention that the Kona doesn't come with wireless CarPlay, which is a little bit disappointing. Then just behind the wireless pad, we have got your drive mode rotary dial, and then we've got your little comfort buttons like your heated steering wheel, ventilated seats, and your 360 cameras and parking sensors. Then on the steering wheel itself, on the left-hand side, we got our digital driver display information and to go through the menus, and also your radar guided cruise control. And on the right-hand side, we do your media and communication controls. So again, it does feel very Hyundai Group in the way it's presented. And then we've got a couple of buttons on the right-hand side to do things like your boot opening and also your electric handbrake. So yeah, when it comes to the buttons in here, it feels really old school, and I really do like that. And everything just has a nice place and positioning in here. And as I said, I do love the driver focus. And then finally, we've got the infotainment system and the digital driver's display. Both of them are 12.3 inches, but with this new Kona, you get the latest generation of infotainment system, and it is, well, just a joy to use. The icons in the menus are really big, so it's easy to navigate when on the move. You get Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but it is just, yeah, it's just a really lovely system to use. It is quick and responsive, and it is very clear and easy to read as well. I do love as well with the 360 cameras, the clarity is just really lovely. It's just very clear and much better than some of its rivals. And one of the quirky things I really do like is actually when you're reversing and you've got that kind of bird's eye view, the side sensors kind of map out where it is you're driving. So that's quite unique, and I've never seen that before. Usually it kind of beeps at you kind of red, amber and green depending on how close you are, but on this it kind of maps it out, and I think that's quite a nice quirky feature. And then on the digital driver's display, it does feel very familiar. You go through the various menus as you would do on the steering wheel in other Hyundai Group cars. But there are some little quirks that I do like. So you can change the rev counter to go from a traditional rev counter to one of those power gauges you get on EVs or hybrid cars. And then when you change it from things like sport to eco, yes, you do get a change in the graphics. Now, granted, it's not as customizable as, say, a Volkswagen Group car, but really, I've had no issues with it whatsoever. As I said, it's nice and clear and easy to read. And the new addition, you'll notice as well in the Kona, and will be in new Hyundais from now on, is the little sensor on top of the steering wheel column, which monitors where your eyes are looking. So just like a Genesis car with its sensors, if you look away from the road and you're looking perhaps down here or to navigate the infotainment system, it will bong and let you know to, keep your eyes on the road. So it is a nice feature, but of course, yes, if you are kind of looking down and around the cockpit, yeah, it might get a little bit vexing, but your eyes should be facing forward. So yeah, sat here in the front of the new Kona, it is a really lovely place to be. I really love the design, and it feels very spacious as well. Granted, just not as upmarket as some of its rivals when it comes to some of the materials used. But you know what? I think that's enough of being sat here in the front of the Kona. Let's see what it's like for rear passengers. Sat in the back of the new Kona, I am happy to report that there's more space back here than the previous generation, and definitely shows that Hyundai have been listening to their customers. Now that driver's seat is set to my driving position. I'm 5'7" tall and 5'7" wide, and as you can see, I've got a good amount of knee room, and headroom is not too bad either. I do think you can get a couple of 6-footers sat in the back of the Kona, and they could be fine and comfortable for, say, a medium length journey. What I also like is that you can tuck your feet underneath the driver's seat as well, so if you do need to stretch out a little bit, you can do so. Now, I would recommend getting 2 adults in the back of the Kona, as 3 would be a bit of a squeeze, but you could easily get 3 kids back here. Now, speaking of kids, we have got ISOFIX supports on the outer seats, and there are no plastic covers or anything. The bars are actually exposed, so it should be quite easy to affix a child's seat. And that does help with the fact that the doors open nice and wide. Now, cubby spaces are actually not too bad back here. We've got some decent sized door pockets, again not lined with any fabric, but you could get a medium sized bottle of drink in there. We have got your aeroplane style pockets on the backs of the front seats. We have got a little tray area here with 2 USB-C charging inputs, and the way it's designed is actually quite unique because you could put your phones in there and charge them at the same time, and they're not going to kind of roll around all over the place. And then we have got a couple of little air vents as well just above them. And then we have got the center armrest that comes down now, and that does feel really sturdy, with a couple of additional cup holders. And I will mention that you have got a 40-20-40 split in the rear seats, so you can put the middle seat down if you do want to load any longer items through into the rear passenger area. And then finally, we have got the windows, which are of a nice decent size. They are tinted on this particular trim, and when they're open, they go to about 95% of the way down, so I can still rest my arm on the edge if I need to. Also, something I will mention is that the seats here in the back of this N-Line S trim are heated on the outer passenger seats as well, so that's a nice little feature come winter time. So yeah, sat in the back of the new Kona, it is a big improvement over its predecessor, and I could easily do a medium to long journey sat back here, and I would be really nice and comfortable with no complaints. And on that note, I think it's time we leave the rear seat area and see what Hyundai have done with the boot. Opening the boot of the new Kona presents you with 466 litres of space, which is a vast improvement over its predecessor, and even beats the likes of the Skoda Kamiq and even the Kia Niro self-charging hybrid, for which this is a direct rival. And then when you got the boot open, you are greeted by a nice wide square load area. There is no boot lip to navigate over because it is completely flat, and even the boot lip is low to the ground to make it easier to load heavy objects or perhaps have a dog jump in and out of. Now, it's not devoid of features either. We have got some sturdy tethering hooks, some shopping hooks as well, but surprisingly, no 12-volt socket. Now, we have got a bit of additional underfloor storage with a variable boot floor, but if you do put the floor in its lowest setting, there is a little bit of ridge at the back. Now, disappointingly, you can't put the parcel shelf underneath the boot floor, but you can tuck it behind the rear seats, kind of like a Skoda Fabia, so that way you can load some larger, bulkier items into the back of the Kona. And then if you get the rear seats and put them down, you get an almost completely flat load area. So again, turning the Kona into a very practical car to load any large, heavy, bulky items. But I am just so impressed by the boot capacity of the new Kona. Again, Hyundai have been listening to their customer base to make a more practical crossover for their customers. So yeah, I am really impressed by this. And you know what? I think it's time we take the Kona for a drive and see what it's like on the road. So once you start driving the Kona Hybrid, you find that it's a very comfortable and easy car to drive. There's kind of a nice get in and go feel about it. Now, because this isn't a hatchback and we sit a little bit higher up, visibility is actually really good. I've got a commanding view of the road ahead. The A-pillars are a little bit thick and chunky, but surprisingly, I've not found myself looking around them at any junctions. The wing mirrors are of a really nice size and shape, and on this particular car I have got blind spot monitoring, and I've got those blind spot cameras that we've come to know and love in Hyundai Group cars. And then if I look over my shoulder, I do find that yes, there is a little bit of a thick C-pillar there, but it doesn't create too much of a blind spot, and rear visibility is pretty good as well. I will mention that the rear headrests do obstruct a little bit of your view, but it's not going to cause too much of an issue. And when it comes to things like reversing, you do get front and rear parking sensors as standard all the way from the advanced trim, and parking the Kona, yeah, is an absolute doddle. So yeah, once you get going, first impressions are very good. Now, there are 4 trim levels to choose from in the Kona range. There's the entry level Advance, the N-Line, the N-Line S, which is what I've got here, and the top of the range Ultimate. And I'll be honest, even with the Advance, in terms of standard equipment, you get a huge amount. As I mentioned, you get front and rear parking sensors, dual zone climate control, radar guided cruise control, the 2 12.3 inch displays, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. I mean, you really are already catered for, and you just get extra stuff on top as you go up the range. Now, I've got the N-Line S, and I'm going to be honest, I think this is the sweet spot because you get all of the standard equipment that you would want, but with the S, I'd class that for safety, because that's where you get things like the blind spot cameras and also the 360 cameras. And also, something I really do like about it is that I've got ventilated seats on this car, and on a day like today I really have enjoyed them. And there is just something about ventilated seats on seats that are cloth rather than leather. It's just, I don't know, you just seem to be a little bit cooler with them. So that would be something I'd recommend. Go for the N-Line or the N-Line S. But weirdly, if you go for the top of the range Ultimate, at the time of recording, it is the same price as the N-Line S, and with that you get things like full leather seats and a sunroof as well. So really, you can have your cake and eat it if you want to go for the N-Line S or the Ultimate. It's entirely up to you. But my pick of the range would be the N-Line S, but regardless of which trim you go for, you won't be disappointed. Now, when it comes to powering the Kona, I'm going to split this into 2 sections because there's a full petrol version and a petrol hybrid version of the Kona available. And I'm going to exclude the EV because that's very much its own separate car, and I want to do a separate review on that particular model. But going back to the petrol versions, so you can either get a 1 litre 3-cylinder turbocharged unit or a 1.6 litre 4-cylinder turbocharged unit, producing 118 and 195 brake horsepower, and you get the choice of either a 6-speed manual or 6-speed dual clutch transmission, and they go through the front wheels only. Now, when you go for the hybrid version of the Kona, you get the same 4-cylinder 1.6 litre petrol engine, minus the turbo, and that's replaced with the electric motor. So essentially you get kind of a split in the power. The petrol engine produces just shy of 100 brake horsepower and the electric motor around 40. So in total it's about 138 brake horsepower. Now that sounds pretty decent for this size of car. However, the performance kind of tells you that this hybrid Kona is designed to be as frugal as possible, because it has a 0 to 62 time of around 11.2 seconds. So it's not the quickest car out there, but it's not that type of car. This is a hybrid crossover. So what happens when it comes to economy? Well, Hyundai say I should get, on a combined WLTP cycle, a little over 61 miles per gallon. And I do believe them, because on my daily commutes I've been getting on average between 57 and 67 miles per gallon. In fact, it's been very difficult to drive this car normally, I'll say, and get under 50 mpg. Now I really am impressed by that. And that means it is actually a very frugal and efficient car. But yes, compared to some of its rivals, it's not quite as efficient as those. But I've been really happy with getting over 50 mpg on my daily commutes and just driving about and hitting that kind of 65, 67 mpg when I've been driving to and from work. And that's been a nice mixture of A roads and driving around in urban areas. So I've had a really nice mix there. So yeah, if you are going to go for the hybrid version, don't expect it to set your hair on fire when it comes to performance, but expect it to be frugal. And I will actually mention as well that with the hybrid you can only get the dual clutch transmission. There's no manual available. And again, it goes through the front wheels, not all-wheel drive. Now, one thing you might have noticed on this new Kona is that we have got the flappy paddles on the back of the steering wheel. Now, you're probably thinking, because this is a hybrid, they're for changing gear. Not so. And it depends on what drive mode you're in. So you get 3 drive modes to choose from. You get Eco, you get Sport, and you get Snow. We'll forget about Snow and focus on the other 2. So if you're in Eco mode and you change or use the paddles on the back of the steering wheel, that actually adjusts the regen braking. And yes, this being a hybrid, you're not going to get full one pedal drive, but it's surprisingly strong, the regen braking. I mean, you can use it for the most part to slow you down heading towards a junction. Now, when you go in maximum mode or kind of level 3 mode of regen braking, it won't bring you to a complete stop, but you can pull on the left paddle and it will bring you to a complete stop, and then you press the right one, but you don't set off. You have to use your right foot. But I do like this system because it could be really handy for those with mobility issues, and it'd be a great way to be able to kind of power and set off or slow down whilst you're driving. So there's an interesting thing there for Hyundai for you guys to have a little look at. Now, if you put it into sport mode, that's when it does change gear for you, and the gearbox itself is pretty quick and responsive, but again, it's not a sporty car. You're really just going to want to kind of, well, leave it in auto and let the car do its thing. So yeah, you have got the flappy paddles there, but they're more impressive when you're in eco mode rather than sport mode. Now, when it comes to the Kona's ride and refinement, I'm going to say it's not too bad, but it's definitely not class best. Now, all cars do come with 18-inch alloys as standard, and they do a very good job of dealing with the bumps and imperfections on a day-to-day drive. But every so often you will feel some of those imperfections just kind of make its way through into the cabin, but it's not uncomfortable. These seats do a really good job of taking the sting out of any kind of poor road surfaces you might drive on. And just like the performance of the Kona, it really does kind of tell you that this isn't meant to be a sporty car. It is built for comfort and being a really nice, comfortable family crossover. And then yeah, when you get up to speed, say 60, 70 miles an hour, it settles down, but every once in a while you can feel some of the imperfections just come through. But again, it's not uncomfortable. But there are better riding cars out there. Now, with the refinement side of the Kona, it is kind of split into two areas. So at low speed, you might get a little bit of engine drone coming into the cabin, particularly on a cold day where the engine wants to warm up a little bit before switching to hybrid or EV mode. And then at higher speed, you find that the engine settles down, you get hardly any wind noise whatsoever coming from the wing mirrors or the A-pillar, and then you just find there's a little bit of tyre roar coming into the cabin. Now, I'm not right now because I'm on a resurfaced bit of tarmac, which is just lovely and actually makes this a really perfect cruiser. But in terms of everyday driving, you shouldn't have any real complaints with the Kona. It's just a very good all-rounder family crossover. But I will be honest, yes, there are more comfortable cars in this segment, but for everyday driving, you should have no issues. Now, when it comes to the Kona's handling, just like the performance and the ride quality, it's not a sporty car. So the first thing you find though, with this N-Line, the steering wheel does feel sporty in your hands. There's a nice thickness to it, and I do like the perforated leather. But as you chuck it into corners, yep, there is a bit of roll and a bit of lean, even in sport mode. And of course, being front wheel drive, it's not exactly going to be the sportiest car in its class. Something like the Seat Arona does take the crown there, or even the Ford Puma. But again, for everyday driving, you shouldn't have any issues with the Kona. The steering is light enough to make it a doddle to park, but still has a bit of weight in it so that you don't feel completely detached from the action, and that's what you want from this type of car. So yeah, when it comes to kind of just the everyday driving experience in the Kona, it does its job. It's really nice handling, really nice with its ride, and it's pretty refined too. And with that Bose sound system, yeah, that's a highlight, because that really does help out with drowning out any of the kind of drones or anything you get from the exterior. And that's another reason why I do love the N-Line S trim, because you get the Bose sound system as standard. So what have been some of the highlights and some of the little niggles I've come across living with the Kona this week? Well, highlights have definitely been the looks and just the kind of get in and go drivability of the Kona. It really is a lovely, easy car to drive. I love this new gear knob selector. It looks less phallic shaped than what you experienced with the Ioniq 5 and 6, and a bit more modern and kind of fitting for this type of car. The technology on the car has been a real highlight as well. I love this new interface with the infotainment system, and you get things like over-the-air updates as well. And of course, with this being an all-new car, there's more technology and there's more safety. And when it comes to more safety, it means more bongs. And that's one of the big things about the Kona, the bongs. There is a bong for everything. So if you go 1 mile an hour over the speed limit, you get a bong. If you change speed zones, you get a bong. If you approach a roundabout, you get a bong. It gives you a bong if your blood sugar's too low. It gives you a bong when your dinner's ready. I mean, there's a bong for everything. So that's one thing you just got to be aware of with this car, is that, yeah, it will let you know everything. And if you're doing something right or wrong, it'll let you know. And then, really, that's about it. I mean, there's very few niggles I've found with the Kona. I mean, the only other one I'm going to add is on the hybrid, the fuel tank is pretty tiny. I think it's something like 37 litres, and that is pretty small. So with a full tank, you are looking at around 400 miles. So again, just something to be aware of. But if you go for the full petrol version of the Kona, the fuel tank is bigger. But yeah, niggles are very few and far between in the Kona, and I think it's now time we So what are my thoughts on the new Hyundai Kona Hybrid? Well, with the two questions I asked earlier. Firstly, this is a massive improvement over its predecessor. It's bigger, bolder, more practical, drives even better, and is just, yeah, I think one of the best looking, if not the best looking cars in its segment, and probably a few other segments as well. Hyundai are just on form when it comes to their car designs, and I absolutely love that. And I love the fact as well, this looks nothing really like a Tucson, and it's its own car, so I do love that. Now yes, it is flawed. I have said that the ride quality is not as good as some of its rivals, as well as some of the efficiency. There are more frugal cars out there, but I could see myself owning one of these. Not necessarily the hybrid, but definitely the EV, because that car has received huge amounts of praise, and I'm really looking forward to having a drive of that car, hopefully later in 2023. But this is just a massive statement again from Hyundai, and definitely is no longer in the shadow of the Niro. These two have got to fight side by side now. The Niro has no longer got its own kind of dominance over the Kona. So yeah, the new Hyundai Kona, it's bigger, it's bolder, it looks amazing, love the interior. I do really like the drive, even though it's not the best. And yeah, if I win the lottery, I definitely think I'd buy an EV version. That's how much I really like it. A very good crossover, not perfect, but should be a massive success for Hyundai. So everyone, I hope you've enjoyed my review of the new Hyundai Kona Hybrid. As always, don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, and hit that bell notifications icon to let you know when I, Dave the Auto Bear, bring out a new video. If you've got any questions about the Kona and my time with it, please put them down in the comments section. And of course, don't forget to follow on social media. I'm on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. So yeah, you'll find additional content on there as well. But yeah, I've absolutely loved my time with the Kona. I don't really want to give it back, but at the same time, I want to see what the EV version is, because I got a feeling that's a bit of a star from Hyundai, and it should sit very proudly alongside the Ioniq 5 and 6. But watch this space. So everyone, have yourselves a great day, and I'll catch you all in the next video. So take care everybody, and bye bye.